Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech with Eris podcast. It's been an amazing break, and yes, we are back. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for supporting us. And it's good to be back with a new guest. Insightful is she's going to be sharing insight on Scrum, right? It's one aspect we've really not looked into, and we have a lot of Scrum masters, people that are asking about Scrum and how it can actually help them personally. And we thought of bringing this amazing guest to our platform. So, guys, if you've not subscribed, that should be like the first thing you should do before continuing this video. Kindly subscribe, kindly click the like button, and follow us on all social media platform. I am your host, Iro Nkechi Omolola. And today's podcast section is going to be an interesting one. So if you don't have a coffee, grab a coffee and sit while we dive into today's section. We have our guest already. You're seeing our beautiful guest. Hi, Giselle.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Hero. I really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much
Hope
for
this is
accepting
um
our invitation.
I hope this is insightful. um as it has been insightful for me, especially Scrum. So I hope people are able to interact with this video and learn something. And yeah.
Okay, so can we get to meet Giselle first?
Yeah, absolutely. So who's Giselle? Um so by profession, I am a certified professional Scrum Master and a project management professional. And I just have a passion of helping teams, work smarter, I would say, and individuals as well, right? Mind you, I said work smarter, not cut corners, because I know sometimes people think working smarter means cutting corners.
Yeah.
um, and so for me, when you ask me to just have this conversation as it relates to Scrum, in terms of like boosting productivity, I just saw that this could be extremely fun because, as many people know, Scrum is or was developed for software
Work.
development or just like technology
Yeah.
teams. Um, but I think it's a very powerful framework, right, that we can just incorporate into our daily life. And a lot of people don't think of it beyond that, think of it beyond like software development or just like maybe just technology teams. People really don't look at Scrum at its core, which it is a very simple framework, but also powerful, and we can definitely incorporate it into our daily lives. And I hope I can just share some insights in how you can do so. uh, because it has worked for me.
Okay.
And I really want to share those strategies and um, help people to think beyond Scrum as a just a software development framework.
Okay. Thank you so much for that introduction. The funny part is, if you look at Scrum, because yes, I actually got certificate in Scrum. That's because, as a developer, they wanted to go through the Scrum methodologies and all of that. So I was certified as a Scrum Master, but it's not like my core per se. It's just like something you need to pass through so you understand the working methodologies. And then
Mm-hmm.
I have a bit of idea of what Scrum is. And looking at it, people focus on Scrum just for work without knowing how powerful it is on productivity to personal um, self. Right? This one
Mm-hmm.
is not work, this one is individual productivity. And I felt this is a good topic we could bring out to people. Maybe if people are looking the power and using the Scrum for their own individual productivity, they'll do way better in even affecting the work life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was why we brought up this topic. So today's topic, guys, is that's the drum roll. The power of Scrum for individual productivity. That's today's topic. So, guys, when you hear about this, what comes to mind for real, what comes to mind? Scrum. And now, how can we use it for our own individual productivity? So, I'll be asking Jessel questions pertaining to this topic, and we'll get to, we'll get insights from the questions and answers because it's like a podcast session. So, you get insight, and you can actually use that on your own personal self and improve your productivity personally. So, it can even affect your work life. So, let me start with this question, Giselle. When did you first realize Scrum wasn't just for teams, but could work for personal productivity too? Because everybody just knows Scrum as work. So when did you realize it could, based on the process or the steps people take into the entire Scrum activities and all, when did you realize it could work for personal productivity?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, I mean, I've always been like in the project management, program management environment.
Okay.
Um, but I haven't worked specifically like prior in technology teams, on technology teams. And I've been familiar with the framework of Scrum, but I've been using more like traditional project management methodologies. And so when I
Okay.
started working on, a technology team, and Scrum was obviously the framework for, our software development teams, I just thought like this is such a great and powerful framework to help teams stay focused, right? To really just like truly thrive, and you can see the value of things obviously incrementally, right? And I started thinking like, how can I implement this into my daily life? How can I, create
Wow.
a framework to help me stay focused, to help me like really prioritize, and obviously truly thrive as well. And I was like, Scrum is actually that framework. Like when you think of it at its simplest, on the on a basic level, that is what Scrum is. It's really a framework, or maybe just a strategy to help you stay focused, to help you prioritize better, and to really help you deliver value. And when you think about, just working towards a goal, whether it's like a long-term goal or a short-term goal, you know, you really want to stay focused, you really want to prioritize, right? And you really want to ensure that you're progressing with your goals. You know, maybe increment specifically incrementally, because obviously with agile it's focused on incremental value, build, creating incremental value over time. And so when you think of Scrum as a framework, and just seeing how those teams are able to work using this framework, you can implement it into your daily life and really create that focus, and prioritize effectively. So, in anything, in any project, whether it's a passion project or just professionally, you can implement this framework and really see progress.
Okay. Thank you so much, Giselle.
Yeah.
So, what does your personal sprint planning look like?
So for me,
Yeah.
you know, the funny thing is, I always talk to people and say, you know what, I'm a Scrum Master, and I do this every day, right? This is something I do every day with my team, and sometimes I still struggle with prioritizing. I think a lot of us struggle when it comes to prioritization. We're not perfect, but when it comes to sprint planning, I can, or setting, clear goals. For me, I like to break my work down into like short bursts of work, obviously in Scrum we call that sprints, right? And so, for example, a sprint could be, if I'm focusing on writing a book, and I'm going to tell myself I'm going to write 500 words or maybe 300 words, every day for the next week. And so that helps me to stay more focused. It helps me to understand that this particular goal is more achievable, and really helps me to just keep moving forward consistently, you know? So you're not really overwhelming yourself. You're not trying to overcommit. You're just trying to be realistic and setting, obviously a realistic goal. So that's how I sprint plan. You know what I mean? I try not to overwhelm myself. I try to set realistic goals, and I really just try to ensure that it's focused, it's achievable, and it's doable. And most importantly, breaking it down into small, achievable sections or parts.
Okay, you know that when it comes to Scrum, there is this daily stand-ups, right? That the entire team, do when it comes to Scrum, when it's a teamwork. Now, since we are putting this on personal, like individual parts, individual aspects, how would the daily daily stand-up, look like? You're
Yeah.
answerable to yourself. You're telling yourself, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. It's a bit funny in that part because daily stand up gives you're dropping your updates, dropping your blocker, getting other team members to see how they can sort that out for you and how they can support you. So in this case, how would it look like? Daily stand up for individuals.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's all about like, self accountability, right? And I always tell my team, like, you have to be accountable for your work. At the end of the day, you're the one that's working on this project, you're the one with the skill set, you're the one that's completing this part. So you're accountable. And so for me, if I have a specific goal, I have to hold myself accountable for that goal. So the daily stand up is just a self accountability aspect of it. And so
Okay.
I would ask myself, um, did I complete XYZ that I said I was going to complete today? Maybe I'm mentally checking off this list in my head, or even if I have a journal, I can just stick it off, or whatever tool you're using, right? Did I complete this? If I didn't, what prevented me from completing this task? You know what I mean? As in, our daily stand up, we might ask, are there any blockers, or are there any impediments that prevented you from completing, whatever goal you set out to complete? And uh, just think about maybe what I'm focusing on today, and so it's just really a self accountability checklist for
Okay.
myself. And if you're looking at it from a team's perspective, then you're just asking the team, what have you done today, yesterday, or what do you plan to do today, and are there any blockers, things of that nature. So you're just asking yourself and really just holding yourself accountable to the work that you or that goal that you set out for yourself.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question. I know in Scrum there's something called Scrum board. So do you use Scrum board for your life or goals?
Yeah, in a sense, if you're thinking about it, applying it to your own individual life, like I said, people might have all these different fancy tools today. You might have a journal, you might have something on your computer, on your iPad, a notepad or something, and you're just
Okay.
tracking progress, right? And it's really important to track progress because that's how you can measure if you're actually progressing. What are if you have a goal to complete something in a specific time frame, am I progressing, am I on track, right? And so for me, I'm a bit old school, to be honest with you. I am not i I tell people all the time, I just don't like iPads. I have my notes on my laptop, but I would pick up a notebook or just a journal, and I like to write things down. Like, that's how I track a lot of things. And people tell me all the time, you are so weird. Like, you can use your phone, you can use your computer. And I'm like, I don't know. I just buy all these journals, and that is my tool, and how I just, that's my scrum board. You know what I mean? This is what I have to do today. Am I progressing? I'm gonna make notes, self affirmations, track my progress that way. It is unconventional, but it works for me, right? So I think you need to find a tool that really just works for you, and you can make that your own individual scrum board.
Okay. So in this case, when you don't meet up with your goal, because you've set your goals out on your goal board and you don't meet up with some, how do you deal with carryovers? How do you carry over um goals that are yet to be achieved to new sprints? How do you do the carryover? How do you embrace carryovers?
Yeah, I think that's a great question actually as well. Um,
Okay.
we're not perfect, right? And I think just understanding that sometimes we have a plan, and we're like, we have this goal to execute this by XYZ date, and it doesn't always happen, and that's completely fine. I think that's when you really need to like do some reflection, right? Just take a step back and say, you know what, why was I not able to accomplish this, or why was I not able to meet this goal in this specific time, although I had a clear plan, I had this clear goal set out for this specific thing. And so for me, I like to reflect and really understand like what were my blockers, what really prevented me from executing or accomplishing that goal, and then prioritize accordingly. If it's something that I'm still working on, then I would say, okay, I'm not gonna add something more to my to-do list until I complete it. So I prioritize accordingly, considering
Okay.
that I'm working on that goal. And obviously in Scrum, it's like if you didn't complete a goal or a project within a sprint, you will definitely reprioritize it, maybe put it back into the backlog, right? And say, okay, we definitely need to bring this into the next sprint because it's high end priority list, right? And so for me, it's just reflecting, understanding what my blockers were, and understanding where that priority lies for myself.
That's true. That's true. You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, there's something called procrastination, and there's another called burnout. So in this case, does Scrum overcome procrastination and burnout?
I think I think it is the framework in itself can
Okay.
can help you, overcome burnout and procrastination, because in a sense you're delivering something incrementally, something small, right?
Yeah.
And I know sometimes people say that Scrum, it is a structured framework, but it's not rigid. It is flexible, and that is where
Okay.
the power of Scrum comes into play, right? Really understanding that although it's structured, it's very flexible, and so you really don't have to overwhelm yourself. You don't have to feel like everything needs to be accomplished in a specific time, and that's why it's important to prioritize. It helps you to really stay focused, and just being a scrum master and multiple teams, I it's rare that you find, well, this is from my experience, it's rare that I find people under this framework being burnt out. And you want to ensure, I mean, as a scrum master and also in your daily life, if you're using this framework to apply to your daily life, that you're not overwhelming yourself. That's why it's important to break your work down into small bursts. Okay, Scrum is not about overwhelming yourself, it's not about burning yourself out. It's really a framework to help you thrive, right? It's really a framework where you're delivering something incrementally in small pieces. And I think that really helps you, when you think about procrastination, right? I think oftentimes, at least for me, when
Okay.
I notice that I have so much to do, I tend to put it
Okay.
off, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, I have all these things to do. I get flustered.
At the same time.
At the same time, I'm like, I don't know where to begin, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna put this off for the next day. It's too much. Like mentally, I don't even want to think about it. But when you start really breaking your work down, when you start prioritizing, you start saying, you know what, I'm gonna focus on little bits of pieces at a time. It helps you. It mentally helps you to create structure. It helps you to stay focused, and it really gives you that encouragement and motivation to start, right? And so that is just a way to mitigate that procrastination aspect, right? So I would definitely say the framework in itself, it's flexible, it's structured, but it's very flexible. And when you just think about the flexibility it provides, and how powerful the strategy is in the self in itself of Scrum, you can definitely overcome those things like burnout and procrastination.
Okay. Thank you for giving us those details and expressing more on prioritizing. But on these aspects here, how do one know what to prioritize? Because I think that is also going to be like a problem for people trying to put all of their goals, their personal goals on Scrum board. How do they know what to prioritize? Because definitely you really don't know everyone's goals to be able to say, okay, this is what you should prioritize. But I think there are things you can drop that can shape people's mind into what to prioritize first as against others.
Well, I think the first thing is to understand that you can't prioritize everything, right? Because you might just go crazy, you might just go insane, right? You can't prioritize everything. And I think, you know, that's where a lot of the issues come in, because even myself, sometimes I struggle with that. You might have so much that you want to accomplish, but
At the
just
same time,
right, in a very short time. And then you want all of these things, but realistically, it's just not possible, right? And so you really have to understand and come to an agreement with yourself, like, listen, I can only do XYZ, maybe 3 to 5 things in this particular time frame or this period. And so I think when you accept that, it's easier, or maybe a less challenge for you to just say, I'm going to take 1 through 3, and this is what I'm going to prioritize for the
okay.
next 3 sprints or the next 4 weeks. Okay, so I think it's just first accepting that you can, and understanding that you can prioritize everything. It's just not realistic, but work in something that is realistic for you. You know what I mean? You can't prioritize 12 major projects in 4 weeks. It's just not doable. You're just going to go insane. You might not accomplish anything. And so I think it's just really understanding your capacity. Like, okay, I have 4 weeks. Realistically
Okay.
speaking to myself, this is what I can accomplish in this 4 weeks. And then you
And,
look.
and you just need to be realistic for
Right,
real.
right. And you just need to say, you know what? On the list, these are the most important things to me. And I'm going to pick, if it's 6 items, I'm going to pick three that's the most important, and I'm going to prioritize them accordingly. Right. And so I think sometimes people really don't think of things on the like the most basic level. And so it overcomplicates things, and it just, push things back, push your progress level back, because you want all of these things, but you're not being realistic with your goals and expectations and so forth.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that out. If everyone applied Scrum personally, let's say 1 month, what do you think would change most in their lives?
I think consistency. I think people will develop
Mm,
the habit of consistency a bit more if they were
true,
to apply
true. That's
Scrum
it. That's the word.
in their
Yeah.
daily life, right? Um, because for me, I mean, obviously, as Scrum Masters, we know that every day we're gonna have a daily stand up. It's just automatic, right? Unless maybe the team have other meetings or obligations or something. But those things just over time comes automatically. Like your planning, which is like setting a clear goal, right? It comes automatically. Your retrospective, just reflecting, it comes automatically. And so if you were to apply just this framework to your life, reflection, which is something I find that people really don't take the time to just sit with themselves and say, you know what, let me just see where I'm at in terms of progress with my goals. Like, let me just take 2 minutes out of the day, or 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, whatever it is, and say, you know what, I said yesterday I'm going to complete XYZ. Was I able to do that today? It's just simple of just simply just, that again, that's whole self accountability aspect. Just talking to yourself and recognizing, did I do what I said I was going to do?
I
Right.
do.
If I didn't, then what prevented me from doing that? And so if you were to implement Scrum into your daily life and really just use this framework and make it a habit, definitely I think the habit of consistency, of just, setting your goals, tracking your goals, seeing where there's areas for improvement, doing that reflection, it will come naturally over time. But it's just something that, you know, you just have to start. You just have to start. And I am positive that if people take the time or took the time to just implement this framework into their daily lives, they will definitely see progress in terms of their goals, right? Because you're not trying to overwhelm yourself, you're not trying to exhaust yourself. You're really just trying to focus on things in small bursts. You're not trying to
Course.
accomplish everything at once. And I think that's the beauty in this framework, that it helps you to stay on track, it helps you to stay focused, and it really helps you to accomplish your goals.
True. And you work with things in bits, right? You don't need to choke yourself with everything at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, you can't write a book in I mean, unless I mean, we have all these tools today, right? All these AI tools. So I'm sure a lot of people can sit 24 hours and write an entire book. But if you were to do it traditionally, and you wanted to just write a book the old ways, and you write chapter by chapter, that is like Scrum. Like, it's like sometimes you find yourself using this framework, but you don't know you're
But you
using
don't
it,
know exactly. That's
right?
it. But you don't know that you're practicing it.
You don't know you're practicing it, right? And I think, a lot of people use Scrum every day, and they're not even
True.
familiar that Scrum is a framework. They don't even know what Scrum is. And it's all of how they structured they create their own structure for, the way they plan their goals and to stay focused. And when you look at Scrum and you put it, simultaneously together, it's like, okay, I am using Scrum. You know what I mean? Like, in everything you do, Scrum is just relatable to every single industry you can think about. You know, and
Okay.
that's, I think that's where the power of Scrum really comes into play. Because if you have a framework that you can apply to any industry, to your personal life, your daily life, I mean, then I think everybody should become familiar with this framework, right? I think it will help a lot of
Yeah.
us just really stay on track, a lot of us to progress with our goals and tasks, and help us to prioritize more effectively.
There'll be more like a consistency in tracking goals. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is actually the last question, and I would want you to, be more expressive so people can understand better what you're saying. What advice would you give someone trying to start using Scrum individually without getting really overwhelmed?
Yeah, I would definitely say just really just understand the principles, right? Focus on the principles first, understanding what is it that the framework really offers. And I think when you understand that, it becomes extremely simple. Um,
Okay.
it becomes really simple for you to grasp. I think when you look at Scrum as a tool to help you like really progress, um, as a tool to help you accomplish what you're setting out to do, as a tool to help you prioritize. When you think of it on that basic level, I think things become less complicated. You eliminate a lot of those challenges or misconceptions out there. So I think first, just understanding what is it that the framework offers,
Okay.
right? And how it can probably be implemented into your daily life at the basic level. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's actually it, guys. When it comes to Scrum, people really, that's the major thing. People really don't know that they are practicing the use of Scrum on their daily lives. They don't just know, and that's because they've not really paid attention to the importance of Scrum, how Scrum really works for individual productivity. And that's why we brought Jessel here to, talk more on how the power of Scrum affects individual productivity so we can be more intentional in working with Scrum on our day to day activities, get all of our goals on Scrum board, and in chunks, just in bits, try to, prioritize what to achieve first with another. Because if you look at the real thing, everybody wants to achieve everything at the same time and they get really overwhelmed. They
Mm-hmm.
get really overwhelmed, and that's when you start seeing people procrastinating, people start getting burnt out, and people start feeling like things are not really working as it should. So if we're using our own individual life as a work life, we'll gather all our personal goals together on Scrum board and prioritize what we are getting out first. And it's
Right.
going to be very, very realistic, using providing the steps in bits and be realistic, because a lot of persons, when you're doing all of those things, we should not work with unrealistic goals. Let's be realistic on what we are getting done, because even with companies, we don't do unrealistic. We are very factual on, these are the things we want to get out, these are the things we want to do. So I would really advise, that was why I told Jessel to advise. But personally, my own advice would just be use Scrum. Use Scrum for your own individual productivity. If you've not been doing it, sit back, draw out your Scrum board, and put on the board your goals for the quarter. We just started the second month in the Q2. So put your goals on the quarter, on the board, sorry, and prioritize the goals you're achieving first. Give steps on how you can achieve these goals, and you would actually enjoy the use of Scrum. Because imagine people using Scrum to achieve work goals, and you using that same process on your own personal life. You do way better and to affect your work life positively. So why not just use it? That's it for me. So please use Scrum so we can have a productive life when it comes to our own personal life. Thank you so much, guys. It's good to have you all stayed up to this section, and it's interesting to see that a lot of persons will start using Scrum for their own personal life. Would want to get feedbacks, drop in your comment section how you feel Scrum is going to affect your life positively. Drop in the comment section what you want the guest Jessel to answer for you. Definitely will pass the question to Jessel and bring back her answers to you all. So if you also want to reach out to Jessel, she's on LinkedIn, she's on Instagram. You could furthermore on asking her questions pertaining to Scrum and how you feel she can help out if you want some advice or information or insights that could help you out on that. Thank you so much, guys. Um, I hope you get the very best out of this section. And thank you for supporting Tech with Hero. We do our best to bring great guests to the platform to share insights that is going to affect our career positively. So thank you, guys. Before you leave the section, do well to subscribe. Please subscribe on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, follow us on all of our social media platform, on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. See you next
Thank you.
time. Next section. Great insight as usual. Great impact. Bye.